Let us travel to this imposing jungle located in southeastern Mexico and contemplate on the celestial vault above us. Thousands of stars, planets, and immense voids. Face to face with this majestic sight, we cannot but ask some questions. What place do we occupy in this universe? Is it possible to find an order in this infinite starry sky? Can we imagine it inhabited by gods and deities? We are not the only ones who have asked ourselves these questions. About 2,000 years ago, a great civilization that developed around these questions arose in this jungle. Come, let us discover the answers that those men of ancient Mexico found. The Maya Cosmic Planners. For almost 1,000 years, this jungle hid the ruins of the Maya civilization. Great cities, spectacular monuments, and magnificent temples seemed destined to disappear, devoured by the jungle. And in the last 150 years, we have rediscovered the history of the Maya. Today, the remains of their cities, their stelae, their hieroglyphs, and their funerary monuments have begun to speak. Now we know that the Maya were extraordinary observers of celestial phenomena. They created methods of observation with which they knew the trajectory that the sun follows in the firmament, identifying the solstices and the equinoxes. In the same way, they followed in detail the journey of Venus and the moon in the celestial vault. In the Dresden Codex, one of the few Mayan documents that have reached our time, it is clear that they had the knowledge to predict the appearance of Venus as a morning star or as an evening star with remarkable accuracy. This knowledge, combined with the development of an original vigesimal or 20-base numerical system, allowed the Maya to measure the passage of time in detail, creating a calendar of extraordinary precision. And why base 20? If we count hands and feet, we humans have 20 fingers. And so it is believed that they chose that number to be the basis of their numerical system. For the Maya, numbers and patterns were very important, just like we repeat and learn by rote. Let's go back in time to over 1,000 years ago. Imagine Maya teachers explaining to their students how to keep track of days, how to follow the complicated calendars and determine the date in which they lived. And above all, they knew what they could expect from that particular day. It is seen that the students are not having a good time, since the Mayan calendars were not simple. There was a ritual calendar, a civil calendar, and the long count. To begin with, the Maya were governed by a ritual calendar, the Tzolk'in, which lasted 260 days. Interestingly, a number got by multiplying 20 by 13. The important thing in the Mayan ritual calendar is that each day corresponded to a supernatural being who conditioned the fate of those who were born on that day. Additionally, there was a civil calendar, where the solar year of 365 days was divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus 5 to complete a solar cycle. These 5 they considered prone to misfortune. And finally, there was the long count that combined the names of the days in the civil and ritual calendars as a calendar wheel of 18,890 days or 52 years. Thus, the Maya knew about the movement of stars with great precision. In addition, they had incorporated that knowledge into their calendars and knew at what time of year to plant or what was the best time to start a war. The sun, the moon, and Venus were sacred beings, personified as gods. So the Maya took them into account when building their cities, designing their buildings, and orienting their temples. This is very clear in the case of the El Castillo Pyramid, or Pyramid of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza, in the construction of which astronomy, calendar, and Mayan cosmology converge. The Great Pyramid of Chichen Itza had 9 terraces and 4 sides, and each side is divided in 2 by its respective stairs. So there are 18 parts for each face, which represents each of the months of the civil or Hab calendar. Also, on each side is a series of 52 decorated plates. Remember that number? 52 is the number of years in a complete rotation of the calendar wheel of the long count. To make matters more intricate, each of the 4 stairways has 91 steps, the sum of which, including the top platform rung, gives rise to 365 rungs, representing the days of the solar year Hab. It should be added that inside the pyramid, archaeologists found another smaller and older pyramid, with 9 levels and no steps, which represents the underworld. In addition, the pyramid is oriented according to the path of the sun. In other words, it was constructed in a specific orientation at an intended location. Proof of this is the famous descent of Kukulkan, the serpent of light and shadow that happens every year on the spring equinox. Another impressive architectural structure of Chichen Itza is El Caracol. In this case, we are face to face with a real astronomical observatory. Let's experience for ourselves the possibilities of this amazing construction. The Maya scanned the horizon from fixed positions like these, preferably at dawn or dusk. Their exclusively visual astronomical observations sought to establish the locations where the stars rose or set, particularly Venus, the Sun, or the Moon. The extraordinary thing is that this building is constructed to enable the observation of certain very specific phenomena. A window shows us the exact places where the sun sets on the equinoxes. When the Maya priest observed this phenomenon, he could be sure that the time had come for the planting season. The correspondence between Mayan beliefs, the astronomical observations that gave it sustenance, and these impressive architectural structures is not an isolated case. On the contrary, all the great Mayan cities like Tikal, Calakmul, Chichen Itza, and Palenque seem to have been constructed to reflect Mayan cosmology. In fact, an onyx instrument was recently discovered, specifically designed to observe the line of sight of positions of stars. This instrument, 1.5 inches in diameter, was fastened to a wooden pole, and in this way the Mayan priests and builders could determine, with the help of stakes, where the sun would rise on the different dates of the different calendars, and thus determine locations for construction. In this way, they could make sure that their temples and buildings matched the positions and movements of the stars. The correlation between Mayan cosmology and architecture is also present in other important cities of the region. The central square or plaza of Calakmul is, for example, a symbolic reproduction of the sacred space in the myth of the creation of the world. At the same time, the plazas were the space wherein the population participated in religious ceremonies. The temples at the top of the pyramids were intended for the priests, who were representatives of the gods. Other Mayan constructions also recreated Mayan cosmology. Notable in this regard are the ball game courts. The most striking court of its size is that of Chichen Itza, 180 meters long and 40 meters wide. In this religious celebration, the players used a rubber ball. Apparently, they could only hit it using their hips and thighs. The key to understanding the ball game lies in the myth of Hunahpu and Xbalanque. The ancient Maya recounted the story of two young twins practicing the ball game at the gates of the underworld. They challenged the lords of darkness, and although at one point one of the heroes is beheaded, the twins ended victorious, finally ascending the sky as the sun and the moon. The game recreates this myth, and the rubber ball represents the cut head of the legendary hero. At the same time, the court symbolizes a kind of artificial abyss, an entrance to the underworld, and players recreate the spiritual adventure of the mythological twins, capable of conquering death and completing the cycle of life. The Maya thought that the sun hides in the west, and that after traveling through the underworld, aided by deities that carried it until dawn, resurfaces in the east. So the Mayan buildings are not only concerned with the trajectory of the sun in the sky, they also sought to create a correspondence with the idea of the underworld with subterranean structures. To understand the importance of this, let us go to another representative city of the Mayan culture, Palenque. The tomb of King Kinich Hana Pakal remained hidden for more than 1,000 years. Pakal's grave is located in the center of this pyramid at its lowest point, which symbolizes the 10th stratum of the underworld. This site is reached from the upper part of the pyramid, passing on a journey that represents the descent to Xibalba, the underworld to which spirits travel after death. On the floor of the inscriptions temple, 12 incisions were found in a large pottery structure that led to a fascinating death chamber. After 3 years of excavation, explorers came to that great burial chamber, where an exquisitely carved sarcophagus of stone weighing more than 20 tons was found. This headstone is an extraordinary synthesis of the Mayan ideas about life and death. The image represents the moment where Pakal begins his journey towards the underworld, where he will, like the divine twins, have to defeat the lords of death. He will then be reborn as the corn god and ascend to the divine plane. If the inscriptions temple represents the underworld, another of the architectural structures of Palenque, the so-called Temple of the Cross, can be considered as representing the heavens, with representations of the constellations Ursa Minor and Ursa Major. The building has a base of 13 levels, and at the top an enclosure dedicated to the supreme god Itzamna, constituting an architectural representation of the sky. As we have seen, King Pakal was immortalized, descending to the underworld to fight with the lords of death, and then ascending to the celestial plane. That is precisely the battle that, according to the Maya, the sun must fight every night. After hiding in the west, the sun travels the underworld until dawn and reappears in the east. And there are other times when the sun is in danger of death, during eclipses. An eclipse occurs when the sun and the moon align with the earth in a certain way. In a solar eclipse, the moon hides the sun, interposing itself between the sun and the earth. The Maya were aware of eclipses and had the knowledge to predict them. However, eclipses meant something very different for the Maya. In their conception, the sun was in danger, and with it, all life on earth. A Mayan text expresses this very well.
And the face of the sun was bitten, and it grew dark, and his face was extinguished, and the heavens were filled with fear. He is burned, our God is dead.
Even today, the tradition of making noise and commotion during eclipses still exists in some Mayan communities. Men shoot their shotguns and children beat pots with their spoons. Thus, they tried to keep away the great ants that were attempting to swallow the sun or moon. We're coming to the end of our trip. There is no doubt that the Maya, through careful observation of the sky, gained important knowledge in the field of astronomy, and they used this knowledge to create a belief system about their place in the cycle of life and the universe. Now we know that they built their cities, temples, calendars, and monuments to reflect these beliefs, and they put special emphasis on achieving a relationship with the gods and celestial bodies that represented them. That is to say, they not only observed astronomical phenomenon, but they incorporated them into their architecture, calendar, and rituals. They created an amazing civilization with imposing temples and fabulous cities. Cities that were once abandoned by their inhabitants, conquered by the jungle and forgotten by their own gods. Today we have rediscovered them, and once again, pay attention to them.
Thank you.